So,
Way to stop death and survive.
which one of you is next? Or you have to die. Life, you get the time that person had left.
Charlie!
Stefani.
Grandma!
2 ways. Take a look.
Death is coming for our family.
Death is coming for us! Because we were never supposed to exist!
We might have a chance. All of this fits together.
Death's not actually coming for our family. Because that would be crazy.
Death never forgets, and in Final Destination, Bloodlines, 2025, its plan goes deeper than ever before. On Movies Explained Ms, I break down this chilling sequel with a full movie review and shocking facts, uncovering how fate follows not just individuals, but entire family lines. From brutal new death scenes to hidden connections with the original films, this video reveals why escaping death was never truly possible. Final Destination, Bloodlines is a 2025 American supernatural horror film directed by Lipovsky and Adam Stein, with the story written by Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor. This movie is the 6th installment in the Final Destination series. It stars Caitlin Santagiuano as Stefani Reyes, a college student who begins experiencing terrifying visions connected to a disaster from 1969. These visions come from her dying grandmother, Iris, who once prevented a deadly skyscraper collapse. Before her death, Iris warns Stefani that death is now coming for their entire family. The film also features Todd Bryan, Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Law, Brec Bassinger, and Tony Todd in important supporting roles. After the strong box office success of the previous film, plans for a 6th movie began, with the idea of reimagining the franchise while keeping its core concept. In early 2020, producer Craig Perry revealed that the new story would take place in a world connected to first responders, adding a fresh angle to the series. By January 2022, the film was officially planned for release on the streaming platform HBO Max, with Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein attached as directors and Guy Busick joining Laurie Evans Taylor as co-writer. However, in March 2024, Warner Bros. Pictures announced a change in plans, confirming that the film would instead be released in theaters. Filming for Final Destination, Bloodlines took place in Vancouver from March to May 2024. Production was delayed earlier due to the SAG-AFTRA strike, which affected many film projects at the time. Despite these challenges, the movie was completed and released in the United States on May 16, 2025. By Warner Bros. Pictures. The film received mostly positive reviews from critics, who praised its fresh approach and intense death sequences. It was also a major box office success, earning around $315 million worldwide and becoming both the highest-grossing and best-reviewed film in the franchise. In August 2025, it was officially announced that a sequel was already in development. In 1969, Iris Campbell visits the grand opening of a high-rise restaurant tower called Skyview with her boyfriend, Paul. Suddenly, Iris has a terrifying vision in which a series of small events leads to the entire tower collapsing and killing everyone inside. Acting quickly, she warns the people around her and stops the disaster from happening. However, by saving those lives, she unknowingly interferes with death's original plan. 55 years later, Iris and Paul's granddaughter, Stefani Reyes, is a college student who keeps having disturbing nightmares about the Skyview incident, even though it happened long before she was born. Searching for answers, she returns home, where she reunites with her father Marty and her younger brother Charlie. She also visits other family members, including her Uncle Howard, Aunt Brenda, and cousins Eric, Julia, and Bobby. When Stefani asks about her grandmother Iris, Howard explains that he and Stefani's mother, Darlene, were raised in a very strict and isolated way, which caused long-lasting family problems and led to Darlene leaving the family years earlier. With Brenda's help, Stefani finds letters written by Iris that lead her to a heavily protected cabin, where Iris now lives alone and is dying of cancer. Iris tells Stefani the full story of the Skyview disaster and explains that after she stopped the collapse, death began hunting down the survivors in the exact order they were supposed to die, along with their children and grandchildren. After Paul was killed, Iris started carefully recording every death in a notebook to understand death's pattern and protect her family. Stefani refuses to believe this and tries to leave, but Iris follows her outside, gives her the notebook, and proves her point by allowing herself to be killed in a sudden and shocking accident. At Iris's funeral, Stefani's mother Darlene returns, which brings up painful emotions. Stefani is angry because Darlene abandoned her and Charlie when they were young. While studying Iris's notebook, Stefani finds a reference to someone called JB, who once discovered a way to cheat death. Soon after, during a family barbecue, a deadly chain of events leads to Howard being killed by his own lawnmower in front of everyone. After his funeral, Stefani tries to warn the family that death is coming for them next, but no one takes her seriously. Later, a fire breaks out at Eric's tattoo shop, but he survives because his leather jacket protects him. The next day, Stefani and Charlie try to keep Eric safe, believing he is next in line. But instead Julia is suddenly killed when a garbage truck's compactor crushes her. Overcome with guilt, Brenda reveals that Eric was the result of an affair and is not actually part of Iris's bloodline, which explains why death skipped him. Darlene suggests finding JB, who turns out to be William Bloodworth. He was present at the Skyview opening as a child with his mother and was meant to be the last person to die in Iris's original vision. Bloodworth explains that Iris later found him and that together they studied death's rules. He tells the family that there are only two known ways to escape death, either by taking another life or by dying briefly and being brought back to life. He mentions a past survivor as proof. Bloodworth then leaves, believing his own cancer will take him once Iris's bloodline is finished, and wishes the family good luck. Desperate, Eric convinces Bobby to try the second method by triggering a severe allergic reaction and then reviving him. The plan goes horribly wrong when a malfunctioning MRI machine violently pulls Eric in using his metal piercings. A wheelchair impales and crushes him, and soon after, Bobby is killed when a metal coil shoots out of a vending machine and strikes his head. Terrified, Stefani, Charlie, and Darlene drive to Iris's cabin to hide Darlene from death. As they crash through the gate, Stefani's seatbelt becomes stuck. The cabin suddenly explodes, sending Darlene's RV into the water. Stefani begins to drown, while Darlene saves Charlie but is cut in half by a lamp post. Charlie manages to pull Stefani from the water and revive her. 1 week later, the father of Charlie's prom date, who is a doctor, explains that Stefani was never truly clinically dead because her heart never fully stopped. Just moments after this revelation, a freight train carrying heavy logs derails nearby, and the falling cargo brutally kills both Stefani and Charlie, completing death's design. The casting for Final Destination, Bloodlines, 2025, the sixth installment in the long-running horror franchise, marked a strategic revival effort by Warner Bros. And New Line Cinema after a 14-year hiatus since The Final Destination, 2009. Directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, the film introduced a fresh ensemble centered on family dynamics rather than the traditional group of strangers, allowing for deeper emotional stakes amid the series' signature elaborate death sequences. Principal casting announcements began in March 2024, timed to build anticipation for the franchise's 25th anniversary in 2025, with the film ultimately released on May 16, 2025. Grossing over $315 million worldwide on a $50 million budget. Caitlin Santagiuano anchors the film as Stefani Reyes, sometimes referred to as Stephanie or Iris in early descriptions, the college student protagonist plagued by recurring violent nightmares that propel her back home to unravel a generational curse. Santa Juana, a stage actress known for her work in Dear Evan Hansen on Broadway, brings a grounded vulnerability to the role, shifting the franchise's tone toward more personal, familial horror. Her character inherits premonitions tied to her grandmother's past intervention during a catastrophic building collapse, the Skyview Tower incident, setting off a chain of events where death targets her entire bloodline. Santa Juana's performance earned praise for injecting emotional authenticity into the otherwise formulaic premise, particularly in scenes where Stefani confronts her estranged family members and grapples with the inevitability of loss. Her casting was highlighted in early 2024 announcements as a key to the film's new lore and character depth, distinguishing it from previous entries focused on disposable ensembles. Todd Bryan portrays Charlie Reyes, Stefani's younger brother, adding layers of sibling tension and reluctant heroism. Bryan is recognized from his chilling role in Chucky and other horror-adjacent projects, embodies the archetype of the skeptical family member who gradually accepts the supernatural threat. His character's arc involves narrow escapes, including a tense log truck sequence featured in promotional clips, and contributes to the film's exploration of family bonds under pressure. Bryan's youthful energy and ability to convey fear mixed with defiance made him a natural fit for the franchise's high-stakes survival scenarios, with reviewers noting his chemistry with Santa Juana as one of the emotional highlights. Raya Kihlstedt plays the estranged mother figure, central to the family's fractured history and the bloodline curse. Kihlstedt, with credits in Obi-Wan Kenobi and other prestige dramas, infuses the role with quiet intensity and regret, making her a pivotal emotional anchor. Her character's involvement in the premonition legacy ties directly to the grandmother's heroic act decades earlier, and Kihlstedt's nuanced portrayal elevates moments of revelation and reconciliation amid the gore. The casting of Kihlstedt was seen as a deliberate choice to ground the supernatural elements in realistic familial drama. Brec Bassinger appears in a key supporting role, often described as part of the extended family or a close ally in the survival group. Bassinger, best known for her lead in Stargirl on the CW, brings a familiar youthful appeal to the ensemble, participating in inventive death setups and providing light to moments before the inevitable escalations. Her involvement was announced alongside Santa Juana and Bryan in early 2024, positioning her as one of the fresh faces revitalizing the series. Richard Harmon joins as a family member or antagonist-adjacent figure, leveraging his experience in horror from the 100 and other genre works. Harmon's character contributes to the interpersonal conflicts that heighten tension, with his skeptical or troubled demeanor adding friction to the group's efforts to outrun death. April Telek, credited as April Amber Telek, portrays Aunt Brenda, a relative spared from death's grasp because she falls outside the direct bloodline. Telek's role provides comic relief and exposition, highlighting the film's twist on the franchise rules where only those tied to the original premonition event are targeted. Tony Todd returns as the iconic William Bloodworth, the mortician who serves as the series' cryptic guide to death's design. This marks Todd's final appearance in the role, handled with sensitivity due to his reported illness. Granted creative control over his closing monologue, Todd delivers a poignant, humanized farewell. I intend to enjoy the time I have left, and I suggest you do the same. Life is precious. Enjoy every single second. You never know when. Good luck. Bloodworth explains loopholes like taking another's life or revival, referencing Kimberly Corman from Final Destination 2, before retiring and walking away, accompanied by the franchise theme in the credits. Reviewers hailed this as one of the best moments in the series, blending melancholy with the character's signature wisdom. Additional supporting players include Travis Turner, Max Lloyd-Jones, from the Book of Boba Fett, Matty Finocchio, Anna Law, and Owen Patrick Joyner, who fill out the extended family and victim pool. Lloyd-Jones and others were announced in 2024 as rounding out the cast, contributing to the multi-generational scope. Minor roles, such as Sean C. Orozmo, the garbage truck driver, and uncredited performers like Leuan Gallagher as a dancer, populate the elaborate Rube Goldberg-style death sequences that define the film. The casting process emphasized a mix of rising stars and genre veterans to balance spectacle with substance. Directors Lipovsky and Stein, known for Freaks, sought actors capable of handling both terror and emotional weight, particularly in family-focused scenes. Producers John Watts, of Spider-Man: No Way Home fame, Craig Perry, and Sheila Hanahan-Taylor oversaw selections that prioritized chemistry among the Reyes family unit. Early buzz from March 2024 announcements built hype, with the trailer garnering 178.7 million views in its first day. The ensemble's dynamics shine in the film's inventive kills, a standout hospital sequence involving an MRI machine, a garbage truck mishap, and a climactic train crash premonition. These set pieces, blending practical effects and VFX, showcase the cast's physical commitment, from narrow escapes to gruesome demises. Santa Juana's Stefani leads the charge in piecing together the bloodline connection, while Brian's Charlie and Kilstead's mother provide relational stakes that make the deaths more impactful than in prior films. Tony Todd's casting holds special significance, with his reduced, more ordinary portrayal reflecting a poignant evolution. The crew's decision to let him shape his exit added authenticity, turning Bloodworth into a retiring figure who imparts life advice rather than ominous warnings. This humanization contrasts with his earlier enigmatic presence, offering closure to fans. Supporting actors like Harmon and Bassinger add variety, with Harmon's intensity suiting confrontational moments and Bassinger's charisma lightening darker stretches. The international flavor of the cast, including performers with diverse backgrounds, mirrors the global appeal that drove strong openings in markets like the Philippines. Production challenges, including potential reshoots for pacing in the final act, did not detract from the cast's performances, which critics praised for elevating the material. The film's R rating allows for brutal, creative deaths, with the ensemble's reactions from shock to desperate ingenuity enhancing the suspense. Overall, the casting of Final Destination: Bloodlines successfully reinvigorates the franchise by focusing on familial ties, with Santa Juana, Brian's, Kilstead, and Todd delivering standout work amid a solid supporting group. This approach, combined with the elaborate practical and VFX-driven spectacles, ensures the film stands as one of the most emotionally resonant and visually inventive entries in the series. Final Destination: Bloodlines, 2025. Production, release, and reception. Production development and pre-production. The journey of Final Destination: Bloodlines represents a fascinating case study in franchise revival, emerging from years of development challenges, creative evolution, and ultimately a bold reimagining that breathed new life into a series that had been dormant for 14 years. Following the commercial success of Final Destination 5 in 2011, which earned over $157 million worldwide and received generally positive reviews, New Line Cinema recognized the franchise's enduring appeal and began exploring possibilities for a sixth installment. However, the path from concept to production would prove far more complex than anyone initially anticipated. The initial development phase began shortly after Final Destination 5's theatrical run, with series producer Craig Perry and New Line Cinema executives discussing potential directions for continuing the franchise. Perry, who had produced every film in the series since the original 2000 release, understood both the formula's strengths and its potential limitations. In March 2020, he publicly revealed that the new film was being conceived as a reimagining rather than a straightforward sequel, intended to revitalize the franchise while maintaining its core appeal. Perry described an ambitious concept that would set the film within the world of first responders, EMTs, firefighters, and police officer professionals who encounter death regularly and make split-second decisions that determine whether people live or die. This first responders concept represented a significant departure from previous entries, which had typically focused on ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. Perry explained the creative rationale: these professionals' expertise, calm demeanor, and experience with death would create a unique nightmare when they themselves became targets of death's design. The concept promised to generate distinctive set pieces while maintaining credibility, as first responders routinely find themselves in environments filled with potential hazards. However, this initial concept would ultimately be abandoned as the project evolved through multiple creative iterations. In October 2020, series creator Jeffrey Reddick confirmed that development on a sixth film had been actively progressing prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, which subsequently disrupted production schedules across the entire entertainment industry. Reddick's involvement provided crucial continuity, as he had created the franchise's foundational mythology and written the original film. His presence signaled that any new installment would respect established lore while potentially expanding it in unexpected directions. The project entered a new phase in October 2021 when Laurie Evans Taylor, a screenwriter known for horror and thriller projects, was brought aboard to develop the screenplay. Taylor's hiring came after previous writers Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan, who had written Final Destination 4 and 5, had exhausted their narrative ideas for the franchise and moved on to other projects. Taylor's fresh perspective proved crucial in reconceptualizing the franchise's direction, moving away from the first responders concept towards something more intimate and character-driven. By January 2022, the project's distribution strategy crystallized when HBO Max announced it would distribute the film as a streaming exclusive. This decision reflected Warner Bros. Discovery's broader strategy of prioritizing content for its newly launched streaming platform, positioning high-profile theatrical franchises as subscriber acquisition and retention tools. John Watts, the filmmaker behind Sony's Spider-Man: No Way Home, joined as producer, bringing significant creative influence. Watts had developed a story concept that would center the narrative on a family dealing with an inherited curse passed through bloodlines, a concept that would ultimately provide the film's title and thematic foundation. Guy Busick joined Taylor as co-writer, creating a collaborative partnership that would prove instrumental in shaping the final screenplay. Busick brought extensive horror credibility, having co-written Radio Silence Is Ready or Not and multiple entries in the Scream franchise, including Scream V and the upcoming Scream 7. His experience crafting inventive kills and balancing horror with dark humor complemented Taylor's strengths, creating a writing team capable of honoring the franchise's legacy while pushing it in new directions. In July 2022, Jeffrey Reddick revealed in interviews that this new installment would differ significantly from the franchise's established formula, acknowledging that after 5 films following essentially the same structure, audiences deserved something unexpected. This statement generated both excitement and apprehension among fans, as the franchise's formula premonition, escape, systematic deaths following a predetermined order had become iconic but potentially repetitive. The challenge facing the creative team was determining how much deviation the franchise could sustain while remaining recognizable as a Final Destination film. September 2022 marked a pivotal moment when Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein were selected from over 200 candidates to direct the film. The director duo had previously collaborated on Freaks, a critically acclaimed 2019 science fiction thriller that demonstrated their ability to craft tension, develop compelling characters within genre constraints, and execute impressive visuals on modest budgets. Their selection emerged from an extensive audition process where numerous directors pitched their creative visions to new line executives and producers. What ultimately secured Lipovsky and Stein the job was an audacious and thematically appropriate pitch presentation that has since become legendary in industry circles. During their final Zoom pitch meeting with new line executives and producers, the directors staged an elaborate fake accident designed to demonstrate the tone, pacing, and style they envisioned for the film. While discussing their creative approach, a fireplace behind them appeared to malfunction, slowly setting the room ablaze. As executives watched in mounting concern, the directors appeared to extinguish the flames, providing momentary relief. Then, suddenly, a ceiling fan detached and appeared to decapitate Adam Stein on camera. This stunt, which combined pre-recorded footage with visual effects, was carefully choreographed to evoke the franchise's signature combination of misdirection, escalating tension, humor, and shocking violence. Rather than merely describing what the film would feel like, Lipovsky and Stein made the executives experience it directly. The gambit worked spectacularly. Insiders reported that the demonstration's combination of surprise, gore, dark comedy, and inventiveness perfectly encapsulated the Final Destination spirit, convincing the studio that these filmmakers understood the franchise at a fundamental level. Lipovsky later reflected on the strategy. The really tricky thing about pitching is communicating tone. It's really difficult to just say, it's going to be surprising, it's going to be gory, it's going to be funny. How do you actually make them feel that? Show, don't tell. Once hired, Lipovsky and Stein embarked on an extensive development process that would span over 6 months. Unlike typical studio assignments where directors receive finished scripts and proceed directly to pre-production, New Line encouraged the directors to work collaboratively with writers Taylor and Busick, refining the screenplay through multiple drafts while simultaneously developing visual concepts. This iterative approach, inspired by Pixar's story development methodology, allowed the creative team to continuously test and improve ideas before committing to production. The directors brought personal experiences and family dynamics to the development process, enriching the screenplay's emotional foundation. Having previously directed Freaks, which centered on a father-daughter relationship, they recognized the potential in Final Destination, Bloodlines' family-focused narrative. Stein explained, "We got really excited about the family aspect of the pitch. We really dug into that in the pitch, giving them lots of details from our own personal lives, about how the characters related to us, or where we thought they could go to become richer." This personal investment elevated the script beyond typical franchise horror, creating characters with genuine emotional depth and relationships that audiences could invest in. The development process also involved extensive analysis of previous franchise entries, identifying which elements had worked successfully and which had limitations. Lipovsky noted that they discussed set pieces from earlier films in detail so that they could really see that we had a sense of the legacy of everything that had come before. This comprehensive understanding of franchise history ensured that Bloodlines would honor what fans loved while avoiding creative repetition. A crucial creative decision involved restructuring the franchise's typical formula. Previous Final Destination films had followed a relatively standardized pattern. A premonition saves a group of strangers who are subsequently killed in order. Bloodlines would expand this concept by connecting the premonition to events occurring decades earlier, creating a multi-generational narrative where death pursued an entire family bloodline. This temporal expansion allowed the film to function as both a sequel and a partial prequel, opening narrative possibilities that would liberate future installments from chronological constraints. In September 2023, Todd officially signed on to reprise his role as William Bloodworth, the mysterious mortician who had appeared sporadically throughout the franchise, providing cryptic warnings about death's design. Todd's return held enormous significance for fans, as his character had become the franchise's only recurring figure beyond death itself. The announcement indicated that Bloodlines would explore Bloodworth's backstory, potentially revealing the source of his knowledge about death's machinations. Tragically, Todd passed away in November 2024 at age 69, making Bloodlines his final film appearance. Despite his death, Warner Brothers confirmed that Todd had completed filming all his scenes, ensuring his presence would grace this installment. Casting proceeded throughout late 2023 and early 2024, with the production team seeking actors who could convincingly portray a multi-generational family while bringing individual charisma to their roles. Caitlin Santagiuana, a rising actress who had appeared in The Flash, was cast as protagonist Stefani Reyes, a college student who inherits premonitions from her dying grandmother. The role required an actress capable of carrying the film's emotional weight while remaining believable during intense action sequences. O'Brien is known for his work on Chucky, joined as one of Stefani's family members, bringing experience with horror to the ensemble. Richard Harmon, familiar to audiences from The 100, Owen Patrick Joyner from Julian the Phantoms, Anna Law from Gotham Knights, and Brec Bassinger from Stargirl filled out the family ensemble. Bassinger would portray young Iris Campbell in the 1969 sequences, requiring her to anchor the film's opening disaster sequence and establish the character who would become the family matriarch. Ryak Kilstedt, recognizable from Obi-Wan Kenobi, was cast as the present-day Iris, creating a performance that would bridge past and present. The casting process prioritized chemistry among family members, recognizing that the film's emotional effectiveness depended on audiences believing these actors shared genuine familial bonds. Lipovsky explained, "Not only did we have to find this whole cast of amazing actors, but they had to work in a way where it seemed like they had the chemistry of having been related for a very long time." The production team conducted extensive chemistry reads and group rehearsals to develop these relationships before filming began. An especially notable casting decision involved Tony Todd's Bloodworth. Previous films had utilized Todd's character sparingly, with his appearances providing exposition and warnings without revealing his true nature. Bloodlines promised to expand his role significantly, offering insights into his backstory and his relationship to death. The filmmakers worked closely with Todd to ensure his final performance would honor the character's history while providing satisfying closure. One particularly memorable piece of pre-production involved 71-year-old stuntwoman Yvette Ferguson, who came out of retirement specifically for a fire stunt in the film's opening premonition sequence. Ferguson's participation required extensive safety preparations and careful choreography, but director Lipovsky believed the stunt potentially set a world record for the oldest person set on fire on camera. This commitment to practical stunt work rather than relying exclusively on digital effects exemplified the production's overall aesthetic philosophy. The production design process, led by Rachel O'Toole, began developing the film's visual centerpiece, the Skyview Tower, a circular high-rise restaurant where the 1969 disaster occurs. The design team embraced circular motifs throughout, creating visual consistency that suggested death's omnipresent nature. The Skyview's circular architecture became the film's visual signature, with the penny that triggers its collapse reinforcing the circular symbolism. This attention to visual metaphor elevated the film beyond typical franchise entries, creating subliminal thematic resonance. Principal photography was initially scheduled to begin in July 2023 and continue through October in Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver's diverse locations, experienced crews, and favorable production incentives made it an ideal choice for the ambitious production. However, the film faced an immediate obstacle when the SAG-AFTRA strike commenced in mid-July 2023. Bringing Hollywood production to a standstill. With massive sets already constructed and preparation essentially complete, the production had to shut down indefinitely just 1 week before cameras were scheduled to roll. This delay created significant financial and logistical challenges. The studio had invested heavily in set construction, location scouting, and pre-production expenses. During the strike, these costs continued accumulating as the production paid to store elaborate sets and maintain location holds without any filming occurring. The delay also created scheduling conflicts for cast and crew, as months of uncertainty left everyone's availability uncertain once production could resume. The strike's financial impact posed a particular challenge. Typically, when productions face expensive delays beyond anyone's control, studios either increase budgets to absorb additional costs or subtract delay expenses from the original budget, forcing filmmakers to accomplish the same creative vision with reduced resources. Lipovsky and Stein's experience producing Freaks on an extremely limited budget proved invaluable, as they had developed strategies for maximizing production value while managing financial constraints. When the budget became constrained, they worked collaboratively with department heads to identify creative solutions that would maintain quality while respecting financial realities. Filming principal photography finally commenced on March 4, 2024, following the strike's resolution, and continued through May 13, 2024. The compressed schedule intensified pressure on the production team, as they had to accomplish everything originally planned while accommodating new scheduling realities. Christian Sebelt served as cinematographer, bringing extensive experience photographing action and horror. His work on films like The Meg and Tomb Raider demonstrated his ability to create dynamic visuals that enhanced suspense and spectacle. Vancouver's versatility as a filming location proved essential to the production. The city provided diverse environments that could convincingly represent multiple time periods and settings. For the 1969 sequences, production designers transformed contemporary locations using period-appropriate vehicles, signage, and architectural modifications. The attention to period detail ensured that the Skyview Tower disaster felt authentically grounded in the late 1960s, from costume design and hairstyling to props and set dressing. The Skyview Tower itself represented one of the production's most ambitious undertakings. Rather than relying entirely on digital effects, the production constructed substantial practical sets that actors could physically inhabit and cameras could photograph under controlled lighting. A massive circular restaurant set was built at one of Vancouver's sound stages, featuring period-appropriate DA copyright core, functional lighting, and enough space to accommodate large numbers of extras and complex camera movements. The tower's circular architecture presented specific cinematographic challenges and opportunities. Sebelt utilized the circular space to create dynamic camera movements that followed characters around the perimeter, building tension through continuous motion that prevented audiences from feeling oriented or safe. Wide lenses emphasized the space's vastness while close-ups created claustrophobia despite the open environment. Lighting design utilized the circular windows to create dramatic contrasts between brightly lit areas and deep shadows, visually reinforcing the theme of fate closing in around characters. The opening disaster sequence required meticulous planning and coordination across multiple departments. The script called for an elaborate Rube Goldberg-style chain reaction where small incidents cascade into catastrophic failure, the franchise's signature approach to depicting death's design. Storyboard artists mapped every beat of the sequence, identifying each prop, action, and camera angle. Stunt coordinators choreographed character movements and reactions. Special effects technicians rigged practical effects including glass breaks, gas leaks, and controlled fires. The directors shot extensive coverage, capturing multiple angles of each moment to provide maximum editorial flexibility. Yvette Ferguson's fire stunt became one of the production's most memorable moments. Despite her age, Ferguson performed the stunt with remarkable professionalism, undergoing safety preparations including fire-resistant gel applications and careful costume treatment. Multiple cameras captured the stunt from various angles simultaneously, ensuring the production captured the moment without requiring additional takes that would increase risk. The crew gave Ferguson a standing ovation following the successful stunt, recognizing both her courage and her contribution to cinema history. The film's contemporary sequences required different aesthetic approaches. While the 1969 scenes emphasized period authenticity and a certain visual elegance befitting the Skyview's aspirational grandeur, present-day sequences embraced a more naturalistic, handheld style that created immediacy and intimacy. This stylistic contrast helped audiences differentiate temporal periods while reinforcing thematic distinctions between the idealized past and the complicated present. Character death sequences demanded extraordinary precision, as these moments represent the franchise's signature appeal. Each death received extensive development through storyboards, pre-visualizations, and practical tests. The directors adopted an iterative approach inspired by Pixar, constantly refining concepts through collaboration with crew departments. Lipovsky described the process. It's an incredibly iterative process that takes hundreds of people over many years. It's not something a writer just writes down, they hand it to the director, and then we just go shoot it. It goes around and around and around. This iterative methodology meant that sequences evolved continuously, sometimes requiring significant changes based on practical realities. For example, the production initially planned a death sequence set in a Chuck E. Cheese-style entertainment venue, believing the location offered fertile ground for creative kills. The team storyboarded the entire sequence and even purchased bumper cars for the scene. However, after extensive development, they realized that setting a post-funeral sequence in a family backyard would feel more emotionally resonant and practically viable. This willingness to abandon work and pivot to better ideas ensured the final film maintained consistent quality. Location scouts identified practical Vancouver locations that could enhance the film's verisimilitude. Actual tattoo parlors, medical facilities, and residential areas provided authentic backdrops that grounded the supernatural horror in recognizable reality. The production avoided the anonymous, generic quality that sometimes plagues franchise horror, instead creating environments where audiences could genuinely imagine themselves, heightening identification with endangered characters. The directors paid particular attention to music selection, recognizing that the franchise's most memorable death sequences often utilized ironic musical counterpoint. The juxtaposition of upbeat popular songs against horrific violence creates starkly comic dissonance that distinguishes Final Destination from more straightforward horror. Bloodlines features two standout musical sequences, one set to Shout by the Isley Brothers in the Skyview Tower, and another utilizing Without You by Air Supply during a tattoo parlor death. These sequences required careful choreography where character movements, environmental hazards, and camera dynamics synchronized with musical rhythms, creating what Lipovsky described as a perverse musicality of death. Tony Todd's scenes carried particular emotional weight, as cast and crew recognized they were witnessing his final performance. Despite suffering from terminal cancer, Todd approached his work with characteristic professionalism and generosity. He developed a genuine rapport with Caitlin Santagiuana, forming private jokes and connections that enriched their on-screen relationship. Producer Craig Perry, who had worked with Todd across multiple franchise entries, visibly struggled with the knowledge that he might be seeing the actor for the last time. The production treated Todd's scenes with appropriate reverence, ensuring his farewell to the character he had inhabited across 2 decades would feel satisfying and meaningful. The directors shot an extended scene where Bloodworth provides crucial exposition to Stefani, revealing secrets about Death's design and the family's connection to the supernatural forces pursuing them. This sequence required multiple takes to balance exposition with emotional authenticity, as the scene needed to convey complex information while remaining dramatically engaging. Todd's performance brought unexpected depth to material that could have felt mechanical, infusing Bloodworth's explanations with melancholy wisdom and genuine concern for the young woman trying to save her family. During one particularly emotional moment, the script called for an improvised farewell that acknowledged Todd's real-world situation. The directors gave Todd and Santagiuana freedom to explore the scene organically, resulting in a poignant moment that transcended the narrative to become a metatextual goodbye to both the character and the actor. Crew members reportedly struggled to maintain composure during filming, recognizing the scene's significance beyond the immediate production. Additional photography continued through September 2024, allowing the directors to capture supplementary material, refine specific sequences, and address any gaps identified during editing. This extended post-production shooting provided valuable opportunities to enhance the film's emotional through line and clarify narrative elements that proved confusing in early assemblies. Post-production on Final Destination, Bloodlines extended from mid-2024 through early 2025, encompassing extensive work in editing, visual effects, sound design, and music composition. The film's 110-minute runtime, notably longer than previous franchise entries, reflected the director's ambition to create a more character-driven narrative with genuine emotional stakes beyond the creative kills that had defined earlier installments. Editor Sabrina Pitter faced the challenge of balancing the franchise's expectations of elaborate death sequences featuring misdirection and gore with a new emphasis on family drama and emotional development. Early assemblies reportedly ran significantly longer, requiring judicious trimming to maintain pacing while preserving character moments that gave deaths emotional weight. The directors remained deeply involved throughout editing, conducting test screenings with friends and family to gauge audience reactions and identify areas requiring refinement. The editing process paid particular attention to the film's temporal structure, which transitions between 1969 and the present day. These shifts needed to feel organic rather than disruptive, maintaining narrative momentum despite chronological jumps. Pitter developed visual and rhythmic cues that signal temporal transitions, helping audiences orient themselves without requiring obvious exposition or on-screen text. Death sequences received extraordinary editorial attention, as these moments represent the franchise's primary appeal. Each kill required precise timing, withholding information to build suspense before delivering shocking payoffs. The directors embraced misdirection, creating multiple moments where audiences anticipate violence that doesn't occur, then delivering deaths from unexpected angles. This requires exceptional editorial judgment, as mistimed reveals can either dissipate tension prematurely or frustrate audiences by withholding gratification too long. One sequence set in a tattoo parlor exemplifies the editorial complexity. The scene establishes numerous potential hazards: needles, electrical equipment, chemicals, glass, creating an environment where danger could emerge from any direction. The editing rhythmically builds tension by cutting between these hazards and the unsuspecting character, using close-ups to emphasize specific details that might become lethal. When death finally arrives, it emerges from an unexpected source after multiple misdirections have primed audiences to anticipate different outcomes. This editorial choreography transforms potentially straightforward violence into elaborate suspense sequences that justify the extended runtime. Visual effects supervision fell to Nordin Rowley, who coordinated work across multiple vendors to create effects that enhanced rather than replaced practical work. The Final Destination franchise has traditionally emphasized practical effects. Real stunts, physical props, mechanical rigs are supplemented by digital enhancements. Bloodlines continued this tradition, recognizing that practical effects provide tactile realism that pure CGI struggles to match. Digital effects primarily extended practical work, removing safety rigging, enhancing environmental elements, and creating effects that would be genuinely dangerous to attempt practically. The Skyview Tower's collapse required the most extensive effects work. While substantial portions of the set were built practically, the full exterior tower and its destruction needed digital creation. Effects artists referenced real structural failures and controlled demolitions to ensure the collapse felt believable despite its catastrophic scale. Debris trajectories, glass shattering patterns, and character reactions were all carefully calibrated to create visceral impact while maintaining physical plausibility. Several death sequences combined practical stunt work with digital augmentation. For example, one character's encounter with a lawnmower utilized a combination of practical blood effects, carefully choreographed actor movement, and digital enhancement of the most graphic violence. This hybrid approach allowed the production to push boundaries without genuinely endangering performers or crossing into gratuitousness that would alienate mainstream audiences. Sound design and mixing proved equally crucial to the film's effectiveness. The franchise's signature audio, the building tension through ambient sounds, the sudden impact of deaths, the ironic counterpoint of period music required sophisticated audio work. Sound designers created complex layered soundscapes where everyday noises gradually take on ominous qualities, transforming mundane environments into spaces of dread. The sound of objects falling, glass breaking, or machines operating became pregnant with threat through careful audio manipulation. Music Tim Wynn was hired to compose the original score in December 2024, relatively late in post-production but typical for film scoring timelines. Wynn brought extensive experience composing for horror and action films, including work on television series like The Haunting of Hill House and films like Annabelle Comes Home. His understanding of horror scoring using music to heighten tension, underscore emotional beats, and provide rhythmic propulsion during action sequences made him an excellent match for Bloodlines requirements. Wynn's score needed to balance multiple tonal demands. The film required traditional horror scoring during suspense sequences, creating atmospheric dread that amplified the threat death poses to the family. Simultaneously, the family drama elements needed emotionally expressive music that allowed audiences to connect with characters beyond merely anticipating their deaths. The 1969 sequences required period-appropriate musical sensibilities that evoked late 1960s optimism before the disaster shatters it. The composer developed distinct musical themes for key characters and concepts. The family itself received a warm, nostalgic theme that emphasized their bonds and shared history, creating emotional investment that made their endangerment more affecting. Death's theme utilized dissonant strings and unsettling ambient textures that suggested an inhuman, incomprehensible force pursuing the characters with relentless inevitability. Perhaps most crucially, Wynn's score needed to complement the extensive use of popular music throughout the film. The directors had selected numerous period-appropriate songs and contemporary tracks to accompany death sequences, creating ironic contrast between lyrical content and visual horror. Wynn's original compositions had to integrate seamlessly with these pre-existing songs, providing musical continuity while allowing the selected tracks their full impact. The soundtrack album, released by Lakeshore Records on May 16, 2025, concurrent with the film's theatrical debut, contains 33 cues composed by Wynn. However, the many commercial songs featured prominently in the film, including Shout, Without You, and numerous other period tracks, were not included on the official soundtrack, a common practice that reflects complex licensing arrangements. Fans seeking the complete musical experience needed to identify and acquire these commercial tracks separately. Wynn's score received generally positive reception from critics and audiences, who praised its ability to enhance emotional moments without overwhelming them and to build tension during death sequences without resorting to obvious musical stingers that telegraph violence. The music served the film rather than calling attention to itself, providing the foundation upon which the directors constructed their elaborate suspense sequences. Release theatrical Final Destination. Bloodlines received a major theatrical release on May 16, 2025, after an international rollout that began 2 days earlier on May 14. This represented a significant strategic shift from the original plan, which had positioned Bloodlines as a streaming exclusive for HBO Max. In March 2024, Warner Bros. Pictures announced that the film would instead receive a full theatrical release, reflecting evolving corporate strategies regarding streaming versus theatrical distribution and recognition that Bloodlines possessed commercial potential that warranted big-screen presentation. The decision to shift from streaming to theatrical release involved complex calculations. By 2024, Warner Bros. Discovery had recognized that its aggressive streaming-first strategy, implemented during the COVID-19 pandemic, had created unintended consequences. Theatrical releases generate direct revenue, create cultural events that drive broader media attention, and establish films as cultural properties in ways that streaming debuts struggle to replicate. High-profile franchise titles like Final Destination possessed the brand recognition and audience enthusiasm to justify theatrical investment. The theatrical release strategy emphasized premium formats, with the film shot specifically for IMAX presentation. IMAX cameras were not used during production, but cinematographers composed and lit shots with IMAX projection in mind. ensuring that the film's visual spectacle would translate effectively to the format's massive screens and enhanced sound systems. The IMAX version featured expanded aspect ratio for selected sequences, particularly the Skyview Tower disaster and major death set pieces, allowing audiences to experience more visual information than standard theatrical or streaming presentations would provide. Warner Bros. Executed an extensive marketing campaign designed to reintroduce the franchise to audiences while attracting newcomers unfamiliar with previous entries. The campaign emphasized the film's family-focused narrative and emotional depth while prominently featuring the creative kills that remain the franchise's primary appeal. Trailers carefully balanced these elements, showing enough gore to satisfy horror fans while suggesting the character development that distinguished Bloodlines from typical franchise horror. The film's trailer launched on March 25, 2025, receiving an unprecedented global rollout across 65 markets with 44 different language versions. This massive international launch reflected Warner Bros.' recognition that horror franchises have become increasingly global phenomena, with international markets now representing the majority of box office revenue for many genre films. Wave Metrics calculated that the trailer garnered 178.7 million views worldwide within its first 24 hours, making it the second most watched horror film trailer in history. This viral response provided strong evidence of pent-up demand for the franchise's return after its extended absence. Warner Bros. Implemented several innovative promotional strategies designed to generate social media engagement and word-of-mouth marketing. One particularly audacious stunt involved special screenings on Mother's Day, May 11, 2025. Where the film was retitled Love at the Skyview and marketed as a romantic comedy. Unsuspecting moviegoers attended with their mothers, believing they would watch a feel-good romance only to discover they had been pranked into experiencing one of the year's most violent horror films. This stunt generated enormous social media attention, with participants sharing videos of their mothers' shocked reactions as the Skyview Tower disaster unfolded. While potentially controversial, some participants felt deceived despite the marketing material's intentional ambiguity. The prank created viral marketing that reached audiences beyond traditional horror demographics. Additionally, Warner Bros. Partnered with select theaters to offer a special double bill event on May 9 and 10, 1 week before Bloodlines' official release. These screenings paired the new film with the original 2000 Final Destination, allowing longtime fans to experience the franchise's evolution directly while introducing newer audiences to the series' origins. The double bill events sold out rapidly in major markets, demonstrating the franchise's enduring fanbase and their enthusiasm for Bloodlines' arrival. The film opened in 3,523 theaters across the United States and Canada, a wide release that positioned it as a major event rather than a niche genre offering. This theater count compared favorably to previous franchise entries and indicated Warner Bros.' confidence in commercial prospects. The wide release ensured availability across geographic markets and demographic groups, maximizing opening weekend potential while the film enjoyed peak awareness from the marketing campaign. International distribution followed similar wide release patterns across major markets. The franchise had historically performed well internationally, with previous entries often earning more from foreign markets than domestic. Warner Bros. Coordinated releases across Europe, Latin America, and Asia to create a global event, preventing piracy that might result from staggered release patterns while capitalizing on synchronized marketing pushes. The IMAX presentation proved particularly popular, with IMAX screens showing the film accounting for a disproportionate percentage of opening weekend revenue despite representing a small fraction of total screens. The premium format's enhanced presentation elevated the film's visual spectacle, making the elaborate death sequences even more visceral and impactful. The success of the IMAX presentations validated Warner Bros.' decision to invest in premium format optimization, demonstrating that audiences would pay higher ticket prices for enhanced experiences when films justified the premium. Home media following its successful theatrical run, Final Destination, Bloodlines transitioned to home media through a carefully orchestrated release strategy designed to maximize revenue across multiple windows while serving diverse consumer preferences. On June 17, 2025, approximately 1 month after the US theatrical debut, Warner Bros. Home Entertainment announced the film's digital release through premium video on-demand platforms including iTunes, Amazon Video, Google Play Movies, YouTube, and Vudu. This relatively short theatrical window reflected contemporary distribution realities, as studios increasingly compress release windows to capitalize on theatrical marketing while films remain culturally relevant. The digital release allowed consumers to purchase or rent the film for home viewing at premium pricing, typically $19.99 for purchases and $5.99 for 48-hour rentals. These prices positioned Bloodlines as a premium new release, capturing revenue from audiences who preferred home viewing or had missed the theatrical run. The digital release included both standard definition and high definition options, with 4K Ultra HD available for compatible devices and services. Physical media releases followed on July 22, 2025, with Ultra HD Blu-ray, Standard Blu-ray, and DVD versions becoming available through retail outlets and online vendors. The physical releases targeted collectors and enthusiasts who valued superior audio, video quality and supplementary materials. The Ultra HD Blu-ray featured 4K resolution with HDR, high dynamic range, color grading that enhanced the film's visual impact, particularly during the elaborate death sequences where increased contrast and color depth made practical blood effects and lighting design more visceral. The physical media releases included extensive bonus features that provided insights into the production process. A comprehensive making-of documentary, approximately 60 minutes in length, featured interviews with directors Lipovsky and Stein, writers Busick and Taylor, producer Craig Perry, and key cast members. The documentary explored the film's development history, the director's famous pitch that secured them the job, the challenges of creating practical death effects, and the emotional experience of working with Todd on his final performance. Additional bonus features included deleted scenes with optional director commentary explaining why sequences were removed, an alternate ending that test audiences had rejected, storyboard comparisons showing how death sequences evolved from conception to execution, and featurettes focusing on specific aspects of production including stunt work, practical effects, and period-accurate production design for the 1969 sequences. The Ultra HD Blu-ray also included both the theatrical cut and an unrated version featuring additional violence that had been trimmed to secure an R rating for theatrical release. Director commentary tracks on both the Blu-ray and Ultra HD versions featured Lipovsky and Stein discussing the film in extensive detail. The directors provided scene-by-scene analysis, sharing creative decisions, production challenges, references to previous franchise entries, and Easter eggs that casual viewers might have missed. Their commentary revealed the extensive thought and planning behind seemingly spontaneous moments, demonstrating how carefully orchestrated even the most chaotic sequences were. The film began streaming exclusively on HBO Max starting August 1, 2025. Approximately 10 weeks after theatrical release. This streaming debut represented the culmination of Bloodlines' theatrical first release strategy, making the film available to HBO Max subscribers without additional fees. The streaming release allowed the film to reach audiences who preferred subscription streaming over theatrical viewing or digital purchases, maximizing total viewership while the film retained cultural relevance. HBO Max promoted the streaming debut extensively within the platform, featuring Bloodlines prominently on the homepage and creating curated collections that paired it with previous franchise entries. This curation strategy encouraged new fans to explore the franchise's history while allowing completists to revisit earlier films with fresh appreciation for how Bloodlines expanded and reimagined the mythology. The streaming release included bonus content similar to physical media, though not as extensive. Behind-the-scenes featurettes and select deleted scenes were available, though the in-depth commentary tracks and some supplementary materials remained exclusive to physical media purchases. This tiered approach to bonus content encouraged enthusiasts to purchase physical releases while still providing streaming subscribers with meaningful supplementary material. Final Destination Bloodlines opens strong in India. A superscript 19.75 CR in 2 days. The long-lasting horror series Final Destination is back, and people in India are showing up for the bloodletting. The 6th entry, Final Destination, Bloodlines, made a superscript 19.75 crore in just 2 days at the India box office, showing that there is still an audience for these death-defying thrills. Strong growth on day 2. Competes with MI8. Bloodlines opened with a superscript 14.50 crore on Thursday and also showed nice growth on Friday with a superscript 15.25 crore. The overall Friday increase of almost 17% suggests strong word of mouth, particularly from the metro audiences and loyal horror fans. Industry insiders are attributing the growth to iSense brand loyalty formed over 5 features. iSense, the new concept of family curses and supernatural death traps. iSense youth difference attendance and occupancy on late night shows that said Bloodlines will be competing for premium screens with Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible at the Final Reckoning, which is attracting the action audiences. Bloodlines will need to hold over the weekend to get to the important A superscript 120 crore milestone. Box office collection. India, net, day 1, Thursday, I superscript 14.50 crore. Day 2, Friday, I superscript 15.25 crore. Total, 2 days, I superscript 19.75 crore to date. Bloodlines has managed to beat other recent horror films in India, like The Pope's Exorcist and Evil Dead Rise, in their first 2 days, meaning that Final Destination is still a first-rate horror brand in India. What is driving the film's trajectory? Final Destination, Bloodlines is directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, balancing the fatalism seen in previous films with a new mythos based on ancestral curses, inherent fatality sequences. By the way of performance metrics, we can see audience responses to Bloodlines are focused on creative death, visual set pieces, nostalgic ties to the 2000s original formula, a clearer narrative than could be expected for the 6th entry. Bloodlines acts as both a reboot and a prequel to fill in details for the death entity that has haunted and relentlessly killed since 2000. Box office worldwide verdict. Even when Mission Impossible 8 is dominating high-end screens and media outlets, the Final Destination, Bloodlines experience remains exclusive, dark, and bloody. In 2 days the film has grossed a superscript 19.75 crore so far, which points to sleeper hit potential in India, especially given the brand's consistent performance on a broken bar. Should the trend continue, it should be an easy trip to the finish line this weekend. AZ Currency also read, Mission Impossible 8 India box office, Tom Cruise to deliver 2025's biggest Hollywood opening, surpassing Bollywood biggies. In one of the many funeral services within this franchise, the importance of time and how to spend it wisely is brought up. It's a theme well explored where premonitions of imminent death speed people through the stages of grief regarding their own mortality. Time is also relevant to the legions of horror fans who have been waiting 14 years since the last entry, Final Destination 5. 2011. A solid sequel that tactfully painted itself as a celebratory send-off. Like every twist ending, death never gives up on his plans but rests dormant until we least suspect it. Final Destination Bloodlines offers origins and revelations that never fully transform its predecessors and serves as another perfectly decent sequel. Promises of sequels arose as early as 2011 with series stalwart Tony Todd revealing plans for 2 further entries filmed back-to-back. A first responders-centered disaster was floated, as were ominous industry terms like reboot and reimagining, which are odd to dread given how nebulous the canon has always been. Franchise producer Craig Perry and story writer John Watts finally saw the signs for their next Final Destination when prospective directors Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein staged their own accidental deaths in an ingenious pre-recorded Zoom pitch meeting. Bloodlines follows Stefani, Caitlin Santagiuana, who learns of a grand conspiracy of accidental deaths all tracing back to her grandmother who prevented a disaster in the 1960s. Hundreds of lives saved, or Leach starting new families that never should have been born. With almost everyone now wiped out, Stefani realizes her family is next and does everything she can to protect them from death lurking round the corner. Written by Guy Busick, Ready or Not, and Laurie Evans Taylor, the former also behind the post-2022 Scream sequels. They know about keeping grisly brutalities fresh and exciting. The first distinction from the other films is the opening disaster being set in the past, but 50+ years does not distance the audience at all from the action. Learning from the suspension bridge of Final Destination 5, the elevated restaurant here is vertigo-inducing. Bloodlines wastes no time with young Iris, Brec Bassinger, and boyfriend Paul, Max Lloyd Jones, arriving under the towering set-piece. Promises of reinforced concrete, ominous max capacity lift signs, and an overheard mention of bad luck start to tie knots in your stomach. The dizzying sights through the glass floors, though glossy VFX, will still trick your brain and turn your stomach right over. The sickening effect, thanks to cinematographer Christian Sebelt, perseveres through the extended mousetrap game as partygoers are corralled from one gory spectacle to the next. A far cry from the realistic and abrupt plane explosion of the first Final Destination, 2000, there's something strangely supernatural about this apparently natural disaster. But with the sixth film in, Lipovsky and Stein realize audiences are prepared for spotting every deceptively innocuous cause in anticipation for consequences, and so the extreme unluckiness suits the dark humor throughout. And it's dark. Audiences once shocked by Final Destination 2, 2003, going there, will now be excited for it becoming one of the funniest punchlines of Bloodlines. The only shame is how effective this opening is. The film may have peaked here for some, only matched by a couple of other sequences that come close in sustained intimacy. But then Final Destination has always played with pacing between anxiety and shock-inducing moments, and the deaths deliver a variety of exhilarating rushes. The family is politely warned UFK with death and things get messy, and that is a promise. Those sensitive to dead teenager movies will find themselves squirming in their seats and peeking through their fingers at some of these particularly nasty kills. There's piercing pulling, barefoot glass stepping, and 71-year-old stuntwoman Yvette Ferguson came out of retirement to be set on fire. As an MRI machine whirs to life, a character astutely acknowledges that screw a broken bar, but the creativity runs deeper than what everyday objects pierce. Which part of the body are the innovations within the formula keep even the diehards on the edge of their seats? Bloodlines prolongs our expectations with red herrings and false finishes that refrain the sequel from a lazy conveyor belt of accidents. With eyes already glued to the screen scanning for every detail, attentive fans are rewarded with nods and references to past entries. People have already begun to praise one moment. See if you can spot which death cleverly homages a poster from one of the earlier films. Of course, it helps to like the characters before they all inevitably meet their maker. Bloodlines capitalizes on the family dynamic that brings the cast closer together than any film before. There was surely note taken from the sibling interplay of Final Destination 3, 2006. The introductory sequence deftly establishes their personalities and familiarity, which then serves themes of emotional issues and isolation. Stefani, Mother Darlene, Ryak Hilstedt, and Grandma Iris, Gabrielle Rose, all share the same struggle of distancing themselves, and it gives the actors plenty to work with outside of sheer panic and trauma. In a post-Halloween, 2018, age, it's remarkable that, aside from a mention of sick, Nobody ever explicitly states mental illness or trauma. For the longest runtime of a Final Destination, they still don't have time for a nuanced take that somebody could be right that death is rooting against them, and they also could do with talking to somebody. The most notable and beloved casting is Todd, returning for what would be the final time. Passing away in November of 2024, the gaunt veteran was at no loss of charisma and gravitas, delivering more enigmatic advice to the hopeful survivors. An aspect that fans have been clamoring for over 25 years has been some expansion behind the mysterious mortician. Only fitting that Bloodlines presciently fulfills this wish, granting Todd a well-deserved moment to flex his effortless talent. The playful sinister fate Section 8 drops, allowing fiction and reality to coincide as the sentiment on life and death rings especially true. The moment comes close to saccharine, with Tim Wynn's score verging into Avengers territory. It doesn't fit the tone within the story, but I shan't resent the filmmakers paying tribute to a colossal presence. Bloodlines does attempt some mythologizing within the franchise, but not to the degree some are hoping for. Those scouring over paused trailers, reading every line of Iris' notes for surviving death, are setting themselves up for disappointment. Her book absolutely sets up the story and spurs emotional ramifications within the family, but doodles of trucks are nothing more than blink and you'll miss it Easter eggs. That said, it becomes quite apparent which Final Destination is the favorite of these filmmakers, as it gets far more love than any other film. Perhaps too much. The first teasers for Bloodlines were right to highlight the glass shard in the ice as nauseatingly plausible impending injury. But then posters began to reference the lumber truck from Final Destination 2. They began driving actual lumber trucks in the real world with promotions of Bloodlines on them. There's a lumber truck jump scare in the very trailer for this. Yes, people have been terrified of driving behind those lumber trucks for 22 years. But it was 22 years ago. Referencing it so heavily in this new film is making audiences think about a different film instead of enjoying the one they are currently watching. Bloodlines actually does feature the most common everyday object, a penny, as one of death's most useful tools of destruction. It even influences the graphic art of the credits, so promote that and make the new Final Destination feel more original. Final Destination Bloodlines is neither the best nor worst entry in the franchise, and that should not be held against it. The sheer concept permits New Line Cinema to churn out sequels every year. Anticipation is a powerful tool, and after 14 years, the trailer for a new Final Destination became the second most watched horror trailer, after it, 2017, with 178 M views. They take their time finding the right accidents with the perfect balance between relatable and unimaginable, yet still provide the same cause and effect mayhem established 25 years ago. The fact that Warner Brothers are playing previews with a double bill of the original suggests a clear confidence in this entry. There are twists and turns, but this is still another Final Destination film. Bloodlines will service the same people who enjoyed the last 5, and disgust the people who hated the last 5. Perhaps a character or their death will tilt this into becoming someone's new favorite. I've never been into ranking franchises, but I predict this may comfortably slide into the middle somewhere. Reports of reshoots do substantiate a slightly lackluster finale, which may feel more egregious to some, but the denouement is what fascinates me. More so the early reactions I've been reading on social media. They want trilogies, entire 1960s set prequels, and recurring survivors. It shows that people appreciate the effort behind this new film, but Bloodlines isn't Avengers: Infinity War 2018. I hope the franchise never becomes that. These are by and large self-contained horror films designed for us to find perverse enjoyment in seeing the cast get wiped out in bloody fashion. God help us when we need to stream the limited series to fully understand the reason somebody gets their head run over by a lawnmower. This overeagerness by the fans can be understood with the tantalizing premise. There's nothing better than watching a film like this in the cinema and overhearing that mid-credit chatter about all the suspicious signs in their own real lives. One person behind me boasted of their pilot brother with a peanut allergy. Everyone has their own Final Destination in their minds, and this one might just be the one you've been waiting for. Directors: Zach Lipovsky, Adam Stein. Writers: Guy Busick, Laurie Evans Taylor. Story by John Watts, Guy Busick, Laurie Evans Taylor. Starring Caitlin Santagiuana, O'Brien is Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Ryak Hillstead, Anna Law, Brec Bassinger, Tony Todd. 14 years after Final Destination 5 made a bloody splash in theaters, the trailer for the newest addition to the long-running horror franchise, Final Destination, Bloodlines, has released just in time for the series' 25th anniversary. Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, who previously worked together on 2018's Freaks and Kim Possible, are directing a script from Guy Busick, Scream Vi, and Laurie Evans, Lucky Dog. This sixth film marks Lipovsky and Stein's entryway into Final Destination, continuing the franchise's trend of bringing on fresh directors. The trailer shows a tattoo artist giving a client a painful tongue piercing before giving himself tattoo. As he works, he doesn't notice a series of chain reaction that unfolds and ultimately results in his death. A chain from the ceiling falls, attaches itself to the man's nose ring, gets wrapped around a fan and pulls him up by the nose as a fire breaks out below him. As he gets wound up, the ceiling fan crashes and plunges him into the fire. While specific plot details for Final Destination, Bloodlines are being kept under wraps, the trailer promises more bloody omens and deaths. The cast includes Brec Bassinger, Stargirl, O'Brien is Chucky, Caitlin Santagiuana, The Flash, Richard Harmon, The 100, Owen Patrick Joyner, Julia and the Phantoms, Anna Law, Gotham Knights, Max Lloyd-Jones, The Book of Boba Fett, Ryak Hillstead, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Tinpo Lee, The Manor. The Final Destination franchise began in 2000 with the plots typically following young people who get a strange premonition of a deadly event in their lives, whether it be getting on a plane ride or roller coaster. Altogether, the franchise has grossed nearly $700 million worldwide so far. While the fifth film notably ended with a surprise twist that it was a prequel to the other films, it remains unclear if Final Destination, Bloodlines is a direct sequel to the previous films or an all-around reboot. The film is set to release in theaters on May 16 from Warner Bros. Watch the trailer below. Final Destination, Bloodlines is the sixth installment in the Final Destination film series, following Final Destination 5, 2011. After amassing over $300 million in box office collections in its theatrical run, Final Destination, Bloodlines is officially set to make its OTT premiere in India. Jio Hotstar had announced that the supernatural horror film will start streaming on their platform from October 16. The sixth installment in the Final Destination film series, following Final Destination 5, 2011. Final Destination Bloodlines stars Caitlin Santagiuana, O'Brien is Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Law, with Brec Bassinger and Tony Todd in his final film appearance before his death. Caitlin Santagiuana plays as a college student named Stefani Reyes, who inherits visions of a 1968 premonition that averted a deadly skyscraper failure from her dying grandmother Iris, who warns Stefani that death is coming for their family. The latest film serves as both a prequel and a sequel to the Final Destination film series. Our review of the film read, true to its legacy, the Final Destination franchise continues to outdo itself, staging elaborate accidents across varied terrains and getting ever more creative with its carnage. Final Destination Bloodlines has its screenplay written by Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor from a story by John Watts, Busick and Taylor. The film is produced by Craig Perry, Sheila Hanahan Taylor, John Watts, Diane McGunigal and Toby Emmerich. David Siegel and Warren Zaid are the executive producers. Practical Pictures, Freshman Year, and Fireside Films are behind the film. Final Destination, Bloodlines, which was released in May this year, came 14 years after the fifth installment and went on to become the highest-grossing installment in the franchise. Meanwhile, Final Destination will be back with a seventh film, Final Destination, Bloodlines co-writer Laurie Evans Taylor is returning to script the new film for New Line. Further details on the cast and story are yet to be announced. Update very early Sunday AM. Don't be shocked in a few hours if Warner Brothers calls Final Destination Bloodlines at $50 million, but the last we checked, $49M Plus is safe after a robust estimated $17.3 million Saturday, just 18% off from Friday's number, previews of $21 million. Interesting to note that the last two Final Destination movies have had a history of holding from their Friday to Saturday. 2009's previous opening record holder, The Final Destination dipped 6%. While 2011's Final Destination 5 inched down by 15%. Everyone has been marveling over Warner Brothers' stunts for the latest horror chapter, in particular those iconic log trucks. Thank God, none of them really buckled. That would be a very bad stunt. Relish Mix reports that the social media universe for Bloodlines is 353.3M across TikTok, YouTube, X, Instagram and Facebook, which is 75% ahead of horror franchise norms. Star Brec Bassinger spoke to her nearly 2M activated fans. Those online have been buzzing about this being Tony Todd's final role as well as the need to see Bloodlines in IMAX. We'll have more updates for you later today. Consider this your Sunday morning report as we are knee-deep in Cannes. However, Lionsgate's Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is only a distribution deal for the studio, did not deliver. Estimates see Saturday coming in at $525K, $550K, a 76% to 78% drop from Friday. Previews of $2.3 million for what's looking like an estimated 3-day of $3.2 million in sixth place. This is bad opening for the weekend, but it's not good for Wednesday at girl Jenna Ortega following the lackluster death of a unicorn. $5.7 million 3-day, $12.8 million total. Lionsgate really tried to sell this one to exhibitors at CinemaCon, with Ortega appearing on stage. She was very funny, and the weekend giving a concert, which the media wasn't allowed to record for social media. What were the stunts here to make it known that this movie should be an event? Even if there were any, it's complete rejection by moviegoers. Social media universe reach was at 130M plus according to Relish Mix, and they noticed the push. The Weeknd is not only engaging his 180M fans, but he's vigorously feeding materials across his social network with 80+ million views on TikTok plus more on Facebook and X, with Jenna Ortega activated to her 37.2M fans on IG, reports the analytics org. But despite the traffic, the Weeknd faithful were cynical, says Relish Mix. Negative convo on Hurry Up Tomorrow is rampant, mostly from fans of The Weeknd who have no idea what this movie is about. Comments include, when the trailer is this messy you know the movie sucks, and, God, I hate trailers where you have no idea what the movie is about. Some feel the creative priorities depicted in the trailer are questionable while others simply can't take The Weeknd seriously in this context. Style over substance summed up in a trailer, and, I'm not going to watch a movie just because it has a famous music star. Some musicians are decent actors, but this whole musicians in acting roles are getting out of hand. Was it a bad idea for The Weeknd to execute this motion picture marketing stunt timed to his concert tour? No, it's very clever and it's a big swing. So good on him there. It just seems like his fans and general moviegoers wanted a movie that was more accessible. Thunderbolts is third with $17 million, and Warner Brothers' Sinners still has a flock with a $15 million fifth weekend. Update Saturday AM. Remember how we used to space horror movies out on the calendar? Not anymore. Absence indeed makes the heart grow fonder. And we have New Line's Final Destination Bloodlines via Warner Brothers coming in with a massive $21 million, the best opening day ever for the 25-year-old series, on its way to a franchise best 3-day of $46 million. There is a shot at $50 million, but, as we all know, horror films are front-loaded. But this is a B+ cinema score, high praise for a horror film. By the way, This always happens when vintage horror properties are rebooted after some time. They just come in mega higher when they have not just a high gloss but possess an authentic homage to the roots of the original. That is A Nightmare on Elm Street reboot in 2010 opened to $32.9 million, and 2005's The Amityville Horror with Ryan Reynolds opened to $23.5 million. And then, of course, there's the Jamie Lee Curtis reprise Halloween, which debuted to a franchise best of $76.2 million in 2018. That is except for Warner Bros.' fifth weekend of Sinners, which is still seeing $15 million, minus 32%, after a $4.4 million Friday. Disney's Thunderbolts is a tad ahead of Sinners in the number 2 spot with $4.3 million and around $15.5 million, minus 52%, for a running cume of $154.4 million. Amazon MGM Studios The Accountant 2 is looking to pencil out Lionsgate and Live Nation's Hurry Up Tomorrow for 5th place, $4.6 million to $3M, $3.6M per Lionsgate. Average ticket price for Hurry Up Tomorrow is $12.91. Which means admissions are ranging from $232K to $278K. The Weeknd's Glendale, as tour stop on May 9th pulled in $58K, but reportedly made more money at $8.7 million with tickets at an average price of $150. Final Destination is leaning 52% men with the 25-34 demo the biggest at 34%. And the over 35 group only 27%, so it's young. The pick is playing strongest in the South, South Central and Midwest with the Regal Times Square NYC the best location in the nation with close to $82,000 through yesterday. Hurry Up Tomorrow gets a C enough to slow it down. Realize, and we'll talk about this more throughout the weekend, that the same people who'll spend hundreds of dollars to see any major performing artist aren't the same crowd who'll rush to the theater. Remember Madonna with her big screen debut Desperately Seeking Susan back in 1985? That didn't exactly knock it out of the park with a $1.5 million opening in number 14 and she was huge at the time. And then remember Madonna again in 1987's Who's That Girl which opened a tad higher at $2.5 million in number 7. But by the time the movie ended its run at $7 million, nobody wanted to know who that girl was anymore. For The Weeknd, Hurry Up Tomorrow was something of an advertisement for his After Hours Till Dawn tour as well as the album which dropped earlier this year Prince with 1984's Purple Rain. But the difference is that movie was magnetic, the singles everywhere on the radio and MTV during the late summer. You had to see Purple Rain. Talk about a hit. The movie opened to $7.7 million and had a near 9x multiple in its initial run with a domestic take of $68.3 million. That 360 marketing campaign worked. But then back to the whole notion that moviegoers and concertgoers are two separate types of consumers. Prince's follow-up Under the Cherry Moon sunk with a final $10 million domestic gross. Women bought tickets to Hurry Up Tomorrow at 55%, with the 18-24 demo the pick's biggest at 44%. And 42% Latino and Hispanic, 28% Caucasian, 15% Black and 7% Asian. West Coast is over-indexing on the Weeknd movie at 33%, versus 24%, with AMC The Grove the pick's best venue with $15,000. Total weekend for all films is coming in at $102.8 million. Plus 6% from a year ago when Paramount's Ryan Reynolds movie If ruled with a $33.7 million opening. Update, Friday afternoon, who says two horror movies can't live in the same space? Warner Brothers, New Line's Final Destination Bloodlines is seeing a $20 million Friday, including last night's $5.5 million in previews, for a $43 million three-day gross at 3,523 theaters. As we told you previously, that would be the best opening ever for a Final Destination movie. The studio's Sinners, meanwhile, is eyeing a fifth weekend of $15 million, off 32% from last week. Even though Sinners is in third place as of this point, damn, An unprecedented hold for a R-rated horror movie won again, this time $500,000 more than the Blair Witch Project's fifth session of $14.5 million. Running Cume by Sunday will stand around $240.3 million. Sinners has 70 IMAX auditoriums this week, and its overall theater count is 3,518. In second place for this frame is Disney's Thunderbolts with a third weekend of $16 million at 3,960, minus 50%, for a running Cume by Sunday of $154.8 million. It's 14% ahead of Eternals at the same point in time. Fourth is Warner Brothers / Legendary's A Minecraft Movie with a $3.3 million Friday, a seventh weekend of $5.6 million, off 27%, and running total of $416.3 million. Fifth is Lionsgate and Live Nation's Hurry Up Tomorrow with a low $3.3M $4.7M opening after a $2.5 million Friday, including $1.65 million previews. Interesting to note that the weekend's May 9th Glendale, as tour stop at State Farm Stadium pulled in a reported $8.7 million alone, 85% more than the expected opening weekend for the four-time Grammy winners movie. Here, update after previous exclusive. Warner is reporting $5.5 million in previews for New Line's Final Destination Bloodlines, well ahead of what we were spotting. That's ahead of Sinners at $4.7 million. It's also $100,000 higher than the previews for Conjuring spin-off The Nun, which went on to do a $22 million Friday and $53 million three-day opening frame. Woes are Warner's very strong post-track exits from the fan crowd last night with 4 stars and 69% definite recommend, skewing 60% men. No one is going to be hurrying up to Lionsgate. Live Nation's Hurry Up Tomorrow, which is getting a 1/2 star and a 34% definite recommend. Thursday previews were $350,000, but when added into early access fan events of $1.3 million, total previews are $1.65 million. Again, the whole movie is part of a 3-point media blitz by The Weeknd timed to the kickoff of his North American After Hours Till Dawn tour, which is set to be the year's highest-grossing concert tour in the US with $400 million, as well as his album that dropped at the beginning and includes much of the music from the movie. More updates as they come. Exclusive. Warner Brothers box office bonanza continues this weekend as New Line's horror reboot Final Destination Bloodlines is stabbing around $4.6 million in Thursday night previews according to sources. That figure is just $100,000 shy of the studio's sinister previews that pick turning into a $48 million opening. The forecast on Final Destination 6 here was $35M $40M heading into their weekend, but with excellent reviews and audience response on Rotten Tomatoes at respectively 93% and 90%, don't be shocked if those forecasts are left in the dust for something greater. Showtimes on Thursday began at 3 p.m. Warner Brothers didn't return request for comment on Thursday night's ticket sales. We've come a long way in the preview game. The last Final Destination was in 2011 and did $450,000 off midnight shows, which yielded an $18 million start. Previews for Bloodlines are also ahead of Neon's The Monkey, which did $1.9 million before a $14 million opening, another notable horror bow this year to date. The best opening in the series belongs to 2009's The Final Destination with a $27.4 million three-day. As we previously mentioned, Bloodlines will score a record opening for the New Line R-rated franchise. Bloodlines will rep the fourth #1 opening for Warner Brothers this year after Mickey 17, A Minecraft Movie and Sinners. Through 20 weekends, and counting Bloodlines, Warner Brothers has notched #1 6 times so far at the 2025 domestic box office. Directors on Bloodlines are Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, off a screenplay by Guy Busick and Laurie Evans Taylor based on characters by Jeffrey Reddick. Also opening this weekend is the Live Nation Lionsgate release Hurry Up Tomorrow, starring The Weeknd and Jenna Ortega. Speaking of horror, at 16% on Rotten Tomatoes, critics covered their eyes. However, audiences were far more generous at 75%. We'll see where that one goes. The $15 million Edward Schultz-directed movie forecasted to be in the mid to high single digits. As we mentioned, it's a distribution deal for Lionsgate, so no skin off their nose. Disney/MCU's Thunderbolts and Warner's Sinners are expected to hold quite well. The Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Wyatt Russell, David Harbour, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Hannah John Kamen ensemble is expected to do around $19 million in weekend 3, while the Ryan Coogler-directed, Michael B. Jordan starring vampire pick is looking to be around $15 million. Final Destination Bloodlines is the horror sequel we've been waiting for. This reboot delivers on every level and aspect. I can't wait for what comes next. Read our full Final Destination Bloodlines movie review here. Final Destination Bloodlines is out in theaters now, and the horror franchise reboot is everything I wanted. It delivers on a solid story that begins in the past but plays out in the present, and the death scenes are as creative and violent as ever. Watching this sequel made me want to rewatch the entire back catalog of Final Destination movies. I realize not all of them were great, but this 2025 installment is on par with the very first one. If you're a fan of the horror franchise, you have a real treat in store. Continue reading our Final Destination Bloodlines movie review below. Find it in theaters from May 16, 2025. See a penny a broken bar, do not pick it up. In this latest chapter of the extremely successful horror franchise, we go way back in the opening scene. And yes, for Final Destination Bloodlines, the opening scene is at least as wild as we've come to expect from previous movies. It all begins many years ago. In fact, it goes generations back, and this scene will tie directly into the Bloodlines element of the title. The college student, Stefani, has been tormented by the same nightmare for 2 months. Every night, she dreams about her grandmother Iris, who experiences a tragedy that takes so very many lives. The poster reveals where this takes place, and ultimately, she dies. Stefani, Caitlin Santagiuana, wakes up screaming every time Iris dies at the end. Of course, as any fan of the Final Destination franchise will know, this nightmare isn't pure fantasy. Also, a penny plays a role in the nightmare, just like a penny will play a role throughout the movie. In other words, if you see a penny, do not pick it up. It will not bring you luck. Quite the opposite. Not that the penny itself is cursed. It just seems to always be around when things result in the violent, creative, and extremely bloody death of someone. Can Stefani stop her nightmare by tracking down the origin? Well, you'll have to watch Final Destination Bloodlines to find out. And whatever the end result, you know many people will die in this movie. And, oh yes, there will be blood and guts. Also, body parts will be flying through the air. Enjoyed the callbacks and Easter eggs, as is often the case with these long-running horror movie franchises that get revived with sequels and reboots. Final Destination Bloodlines also pays tribute to the movies that came before. You need to pay close attention to everything from character names, street signs, and newspaper articles. Also, we all know to stay away from trucks carrying lumber, which also comes into play. Watching this 2025 sequel made me remember exactly why this horror franchise has been so successful. Also, as has often been the case with previous movies, the cast is full of actors you may recognize, but not A-listers. I love this. Sure, horror fans will recognize Richard Harmon, Lowlifes, and several of the other actors in smaller and bigger parts as well. This includes Gabrielle Rose, the Night Agent, Brec Bassinger, Stargirl, the Man in the White Van, and, of course, Tony Todd. Overall, however, you'll see many actors known mostly from TV series. All are clearly capable of carrying feature films, which they prove here. And I love that about the horror genre. The story and wild effects are the backbone while the actors bring it all to life. Often, we see actors who are still making a name for themselves. In Final Destination, Bloodlines, you can enjoy Todd Reyes, Ratched, Chucky, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Law, Hysteria, They Slash Them, and Max Lloyd-Jones, Woman of the Hour. Watch Final Destination, Bloodlines in theaters now. Final Destination, Bloodlines is directed by Adam Stein and Lipovsky. The duo previously directed the 2018 movie Freaks, which I also highly recommend checking out. I absolutely hope they'll make another movie in this franchise as well. The screenplay comes from Guy Busick, Abigail, Ready or Not, Scream, Laurie Evans Taylor, Cellar Door, while the story is by John Watts, Clown, and Guy Busick Laurie Evans Taylor. And, of course, it's still all based on characters created by Jeffrey Reddick. Make sure you stay in the theater during the first part of the end credits, not only because the story continues, or recaps, if you will, but also to catch the dedication to Tony Todd. Final Destination, Bloodlines is out in theaters on May 16, 2025. Director, Zach Lipovsky, Adam B. Stein. Writers, Laurie Evans Taylor, Guy Busick. Cast, Caitlin Santajuana, Todd Reyes, Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Ryak Kilstedt, Anna Law, Brec Bassinger. Tony Todd. Image is a copyright 2025 Warner Brothers Entertainment Incorporated. Plagued by a violent recurring nightmare, college student Stefani heads home to track down the one person who might be able to break the cycle and save her family from the grisly demise that inevitably awaits them all. After 14 years, the mystery of the deaths is back with the 6th installment of the Final Destination franchise. The Final Destination franchise is officially back, and its upcoming 6th installment, Final Destination, Bloodlines, promises to deliver the franchise's signature gruesome deaths while taking a fresh approach to the story. After 14 years, Warner Brothers has finally unveiled the first teaser trailer, confirming the film's release in theaters and IMAX on May 16, 2025. Directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, Bloodlines will introduce new characters while bringing back a fan favorite AO, the late Tony Todd's William Bloodworth, the franchise's mysterious figure who seems to know Death's plan, with reports suggesting that his backstory will be explored. Unlike its predecessors, the upcoming movie will take a different approach by centering on first responders, firefighters, EMTs, and police officers. One of the biggest mysteries in the Final Destination franchise is why specific individuals receive premonitions of mass tragedies. There has never been any indication that these characters had psychic abilities before the visions, nor is there a clear pattern connecting them. Although the Final Destination films don't follow a strict continuity, Final Destination 5 shocked audiences by revealing it was a prequel to the 2000 original. Bloodlines, however, appears to be a standalone entry while diving deeper into Bloodworth's origins. While Final Destination 5 provided a brilliant prequel twist, Bloodlines promises to finally connect the missing pieces and deliver long-awaited answers for fans of the franchise. Final Destination Bloodlines, Death returns to haunt a new generation. Destination finale Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, was released in theaters in May 2025 and arrives on VOD, purchase on September 11, rental on September 17. The Destination Finale saga returns with a new opus entitled Destination Finale Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam B. Stein, released in theaters in May 2025. This horror film explores the origins of the curse that links several generations to death. After its theatrical run, the feature will soon be available on VOD. The trailer reveals a new generation of victims facing the inevitable death. with ever more inventive and terrifying stagings. Where and when can you see Destination Finale Bloodlines in France? Destination Finale Bloodlines will be available to buy onward from September 11, 2025. And to rent from September 17, 2025. Synopsis: 18-year-old Stefani has terrible nightmares. In them, she sees her grandmother escape death in an accident that should have killed her 50 years ago. Her ancestor managed to dodge death until the age of 80, when she died of natural causes. Because of this miracle, all her descendants owe something to death. A cast of new faces and an iconic comeback. The film features a new generation of actors. Brec Bassinger Stargirl, O'Brien is Chucky and Caitlin Santajuana. They are joined by Richard Harmon, Owen Patrick Joyner, Anna Law, Ryak Kilstead and Tony Todd, an iconic figure from the saga. A new formula like its predecessors, Final Destination Bloodlines is based on a premonition, followed by a series of inescapable accidents orchestrated by death. However, this new episode introduces an intergenerational dimension, linking the destinies of an entire family to a debt impossible to erase. A new impetus for the saga since the first film in 2000. Final Destination has established itself as a benchmark for horror and suspense. This new installment retains the recipe for spectacular deaths, while offering a plot more rooted in family history and the consequences of a miracle over several generations. The essentials about Final Destination Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam V. Stein, with a screenplay by Guy Busick, Screamvi, and Laurie Evans Taylor. Destination Finale Bloodlines revisits the codes of the franchise. Already released in cinemas on May 14, 2025, it will be available onward for purchase on September 11 and for rental on September 17, 2025. A must-see for fans of thrillers and horror films. This article is based on information available online. We have not yet viewed the film mentioned. Onward releases of recent films. Purchase or rental in September 2025. New VOD releases in September 2025. Movies available on video on demand in France, for purchase or rental. Movies recently released in theaters. Read more. New movie and series releases to watch on streaming platforms in January 2026. Don't know what to watch? To find your way around the endless catalogs of streaming platforms, rely on our guide. Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video, Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus, Max. Here's a quick roundup of films and series to watch right now. One particularly memorable piece of pre-production involved 71-year-old stuntwoman Yvette Ferguson, who came out of retirement specifically for a fire stunt in the film's opening premonition sequence. Ferguson's participation required extensive safety preparations and careful choreography, but director Lipovsky believed the stunt potentially set a world record for the oldest person set on fire on camera. This commitment to practical stunt work rather than relying exclusively on digital effects exemplified the production's overall aesthetic philosophy. The production design process, led by Rachel O'Toole, began developing the film's visual centerpiece, the Skyview Tower, a circular high-rise restaurant where the 1969 disaster occurs. The design team embraced circular motifs throughout, creating visual consistency that suggested death's omnipresent nature. The Skyview's circular architecture became the film's visual signature, with the penny that triggers its collapse reinforcing the circular symbolism. This attention to visual metaphor elevated the film beyond typical franchise entries, creating subliminal thematic resonance. Principal photography was initially scheduled to begin in July 2023 and continue through October in Vancouver, British Columbia. Vancouver's diverse locations, experienced crews, and favorable production incentives made it an ideal choice for the ambitious production. However, the film faced an immediate obstacle when the SAG-AFTRA strike commenced in mid-July 2023. Bringing Hollywood production to a standstill. With massive sets already constructed and preparation essentially complete, the production had to shut down indefinitely just 1 week before cameras were scheduled to roll. This delay created significant financial and logistical challenges. The studio had invested heavily in set construction, location scouting, and pre-production expenses. During the strike, these costs continued accumulating as the production paid to store elaborate sets and maintain location holds without any filming occurring. The delay also created scheduling conflicts for cast and crew, as months of uncertainty left everyone's availability uncertain once production could resume. The strike's financial impact posed a particular challenge. Typically, when productions face expensive delays beyond anyone's control, studios either increase budgets to absorb additional costs or subtract delay expenses from the original budget, forcing filmmakers to accomplish the same creative vision with reduced resources. Lipovsky and Stein's experience producing Freaks on an extremely limited budget proved invaluable, as they had developed strategies for maximizing production value while managing financial constraints. When the budget became constrained, they worked collaboratively with department heads to identify creative solutions that would maintain quality while respecting financial realities. Filming principal photography finally commenced on March 4, 2024, following the strike's resolution, and continued through May 13, 2024. The compressed schedule intensified pressure on the production team, as they had to accomplish everything originally planned while accommodating new scheduling realities. Christian Sabalt served as cinematographer, bringing extensive experience photographing action and horror. His work on films like The Meg and Tomb Raider demonstrated his ability to create dynamic visuals that enhanced suspense and spectacle.